And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 742. Continuing our team by team previews to get you ready for the 2025 fantasy baseball season. And we wrap up the NL Central with the Pittsburgh Pirates, a team that has some of the best young pitching in baseball. Some questions on the offensive side of things. We'll break it all down for you here. In order to help me do so, the gentleman joined me last year to preview the Pirates. You can find a ton of work, all of his work pretty much at rotoballer.com. If it's DFS, if it's season long basketball, he does all the different sports, football, baseball, basketball, you name it. Thunder Dan is involved. You can find him on Twitter at Thunder Dan DFS. Dan Palyo, how we doing, my friend?
I'm good, Bubba, man. Thanks for having me back. It's the third, basically makes the third straight year for the Pirates breakdown. I'm hoping
Beautiful.
maybe this is the year that we have more positive things to say about the team, but we'll see.
Yeah, there's definitely some things. I'll say that. There's some definite positives in this regard, but
Yeah,
there's definitely some you're just like, why are we still doing this in this regards? And I get it. That's how, unfortunately, it feels like over half of baseball is right now.
yeah,
Um,
true.
Before we get going on the team here, I kind of half plugged what you got going because you have a ton going on. So plug everything and what people can see and find you and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the shout out. Mainly, most of my stuff's a rotoballer. If you're looking for any kind of betting content, I do that stuff a little bit on the side with a
Yep.
Substack that I have for NBA, baseball. A lot of props, a lot of strikeout props are some of my favorites. And yeah, I'm kind of glad football's over. Everyone always asks me which one's my favorite, and I love kind of basketball and baseball, and football is my least favorite. People kind of find that to be weird, but it's just flooded, man. With honestly, football is flooded with content creators,
Yep.
and it's just I don't know. I feel like the masses are on football already, so I'd much rather dig in my heels to the NBA and MLB actually line up nicely with the way that one kind of rolls into the next. So yeah, just all my stuff's out there. Follow me, and I'm always doing something with either betting, DFS, or mainly season long baseball and basketball. So
Yep, ton of betting stuff on his Substack, so definitely go check that out as well. But yeah, I agree. The football market, that's why I kind of just eventually just ducked out of it. It was so flooded. I was like, I'm going to dedicate my time like full bore into the baseball world and go there. And
love
honestly,
it.
to each their own. There's obviously great football stuff out there, but it's a great point
Yeah,
you made. It's a great
of
point
course.
you made, though. It's like a ton going on there.
I mean, there's so much with like base. I'm not to go on a whole tangent, but like fantasy football is like a lot of luck, and your guys don't get hurt. And with basketball and foot and baseball, especially, there's so many more games, so many more players. So you got prospects to dig into. You got there's to me, it's like there's so many more levels to it. That I know football has their whole dynasty thing, and they have a lot of
Mhm.
different stuff going on there too. But truly, like baseball is a fun one to you not only knew the 25-man roster, but you got all the prospects for all the teams. You got great trade season. You got just it's a grind, but it's a lot of fun and rewarding for those who want to do their homework here in the preseason. So
Totally agree. I'm with you there on that. Before we start talking players on the Pirates, what were your thoughts on how 2024 went? Because it kind of feels like a mixed bag depending on what part of the
yeah,
Pirates you want to enjoy.
yeah. I mean, obviously, the Skeens debut couldn't have gone any better. Jarrett Jones, we'll talk about, I'm sure. Uh, the hitters, we just can't really. Obviously, we're not going to. And we'll spend some time talking hitters, but there's a lot of question marks. You put it kind of pretty nicely in the introduction. There's a lot of question marks and can they develop any kind of hitting talent in Pittsburgh? They haven't really shown to lately, and that was disappointing because they were right around 500 up until I want to say June-ish, middle of June, and then they faded as expected. They faded pretty badly in the second half. Um, and then the biggest thing going into this year is like they just didn't bring anybody in.
Yep.
They didn't spend any money. People in Pittsburgh are just wringing their hands about it. But then again, like I don't think there's a whole lot of incentive for them to with the way that the market, the way that there's no salary cap and anything set up. You watch the Dodgers spending $50 billion, and then like why even if you're the Pirates, like why even we're going to sign two free agents and make a difference, compared to what the super teams have going on. So I see both sides of it, but it's obviously disappointing as a fan when you're like, oh, it's Brian Reynolds and McCutcheon again. Okay, like that's what we got. Uh, you have this stud young pitching staff, and you got probably one of the bottom five offense in baseball.
That's my biggest thing. You got this pitching stuff right now. It's like you got to strike while the iron's hot, and
Yeah,
it's not there. But I get it, like you
right.
said. Excuse me. That you look at, it's like, yeah, the Dodgers are spending, and every team can spend, but can they spend to the level of Dodgers is the question. And so it's like you
No,
said, there's one or two guys really flip the script, and you probably have to overpay to get them. At the same time, so there's
right.
a lot of stuff around it as well.
I suppose they are, in the grand scheme of things, they're like maybe a year away from. If they have a decent year this year and they show that they can be competitive, maybe they'll make a run at it and grab a couple bats. But I wouldn't hold my breath with the way that the front office has worked. And so, but you make a good point. The problem is they have these pitchers in their prime, and how many of them are they actually going to sign long term? If you have Garrett Cole for, let's say, 4 or 5 seasons, you might as well take a run at it while you have him on a rookie contract instead of, waiting until, basically what they did with Garrett Cole, they waited until his last year or two, and then he left, and that little glimpse of the last time they were good was 2015 or whatever. That little 2 or 3 year run just shut down in the next 5 or 6 years of oblivion again. So, unfortunately, it's a pattern of kind of the same stuff. Yeah.
It's a lot of these. That's a similar pattern. Like I told you before the show, all I have is the NL West left to do. So I've done 25 teams now with you, or 26 teams, no, 25 teams with you, and there's a lot of teams, and there's this blob of middle just kind of hanging out and seeing if you catch fire, essentially. And it's kind of frustrating, but kind of where the state of baseball is.
This whole division, right? The NL Central is kind of a whole lot of like any one of these teams would not surprise me if they won 90 games or 70 games. No,
it's perfect for that. It definitely sums up the AL and NL Central, honestly.
Yeah, right.
They're all the same. Let's talk some hitters here, though, and there are a couple, as you mentioned, and we'll start with O'Neal Cruz, who ever since I've talked about him this offseason, I'm always shocked that he played 146 games. Didn't see that one coming when I was going to break him down this year. 21 homers, 22 steals. So all in all, a pretty good season. I think people had higher expectations, all the comparisons to Ellie and all that kind of stuff, but still a very good season. You got to pay an ADP of around 40 for him right now, so you're paying around 4 price tag for O'Neal Cruz. What are we thinking for him this year? Because he'll be 26, still young, and now moving to the outfield.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the move to the outfield makes a difference or not. It's going to remain to be seen. But that ADP is still up there for a guy that like you said, he played all those games and he still was only 2020. Like we were thinking 30-30, right? Like a lot of us thought he had more of that, and maybe he still has it in him, but he just doesn't. And I know that's Ellie's problem too, is the contact. He doesn't make enough contact. He certainly hits the piss out of the ball when he hits it. But he still swing and miss a lot. He still has some holes in his swing. In general, I would say fade, just because I think it's a really expensive for a guy that is still has a lot of question marks.
Yep, I'm with you. Like I'm interested in O'Neal Cruz, but like I said, and you agreed, like Sally agreed with, just the fact he played that many games didn't really bring us what we were wondering. It makes me wonder if this is who he is, which is still a good ball player,
right?
But not what we're looking for at that price point for sure.
Damn.
All right, forever Pirate. It feels like ever since he got traded from the Giants, and it sucks because it is turning into a joke now. He's like the next Andrew McCutchen in Pittsburgh. It feels like is Brian Reynolds, who's a very good ball player, but nothing flashy. Hit 275 hits for average, 24 homers, 10 steals. Like does a little bit of everything, but doesn't like go over the top by any means.
Right.
His ADP is close to 100 right now. What are your thoughts on Reynolds this season?
So there was talk about moving him to first base, and now they're not going. They said they're not going to do that. They're going to keep him in the outfield. It was funny because a couple of years ago we were talking about Brian Reynolds as a kind of a value because you would get him down around 150 or 160, and you're like, oh, he's so consistent. He has such a nice floor. And now it's like, okay, but does he have a ceiling for where you're taking him now? You almost want to. I think you almost want to target guys with. You're still in that ceiling range or in the first 100 picks, right? Yep. And I don't know that he does. I think he's really good. He's just very vanilla. A guy you love to have on your team, but do you want to spend a top 100 pick on him? And unfortunately, I don't know that I do. I love him as a real life ball player. He's great. As a fantasy player, he's just pretty, I won't say mediocre, just pretty good,
Yep. Very vanilla.
Yep.
He's a great floor player. I don't see the ceiling. So I'm with you. Like I rarely have any shares. I have people that love him. They say they build around the floor, blah, blah. Like that's the beauty of any fantasy sport is you can build things a million different ways
Yeah,
if you like your structure. Just doesn't fit my way of going about things, and
it's
especially at
just
that
a
ADP.
yeah, it's just early to take a guy that seems like he has high floor, low ceiling. Those are guys you want to target. To me, you want to target a 3-4 rounds later.
100%. All right, the return of the catch. He's going outside the top 360, so he's not even really drafted in a lot of leagues.
Yep,
The dude still hit 20 homers last year, which is
I
kind of
know.
surprising. Didn't hit for average, played 120 games. He's not a full-time guy. Just, I guess, more than anything, what do you expect from him this year? Because I don't know if there's a ton of fantasy viability just with the inconsistencies, but dude's going to be, let me see here, 38 years old.
I mean, I think, in obviously with his ADP, like he's like a really deep league play. Probably a streamer because he goes on. He is a bit of a hot and cold guy. I know when I write streamer content, like there'll be a week or two where they're going to face some lefties or they're in a good hitting park or something, and he's rolling. You want to pick him up, but I can't see him being any kind of having any kind of standard league value. He's definitely not going to play more than he did last year. If anything, probably around the same or less. As he's, I mean, he's just dude. It's a swan song. Like he's just finishing out his career. Obviously, he's still a good player, a replacement level player, but he's certainly not going to like do anything more than he did last year. So I mean, I don't know. Take him for what he is. I don't think he's draftable in standard formats. I think he's only like deep leagues and streaming.
Yep, streaming is where I'm leaning for sure in that one. Let's talk another former Giant. We have a trend here in Pittsburgh. Joey Bart, who kind of had
Yeah,
a renaissance last year, hit 13 home runs, 265 average in 80 games, had a couple injuries, but looks to be the primary catcher to start the season. Has an ADP of around 280, which is not bad for a backup catcher two or whatever if you're in a two catcher league. What are you thinking on Joey Bart? What's the buzz around Pirates Nation? Because a lot of it revolves around health, I'd imagine.
yeah. I mean, here's the thing. He was like found money last year, right? They got him for nothing, and he just plugged him in, and they really needed him as Henry Davis didn't make the leap, and he got Rodriguez got hurt. So the question is, does he? I think it all matters. It comes out to like how well he starts out the season, because if he plays well, they're not going to bench him. But if he's not playing well, I think there's a lot of incentive to get Andy Rodriguez some time behind the plate. And of course, we'll be watching Henry Davis to see what he's doing. If he's hitting the ball at AAA, bring him up. So I don't think he has a lot of job security uh, because they have no real investment in him. But I don't know. At that, I mean, I said that ADP, it's not a huge miss if he doesn't pan out. But I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot of optimism about him being like the answer at catcher. He's just probably a placeholder.
Yeah, I'm very interested in him, but I'm also concerned largely because of what you said. Is there's other options there? They're not like locked into him. They don't have to
Right.
play him. They probably would like to see what the prospects have, type thing. And heck, Bart could be a trade asset to them at the deadline if he's
Yeah.
playing well. So
Right.
that's the concern. Like early in draft season, because I'm a degenerate and started in October. I was like, okay, this works as a backup guy. And as draft season's gone on, I've been kind of wishy washy on that.
Right.
New Pittsburgh Pirate, Tommy Pham, who just keeps finding new teams because maybe he has that stunning personality or whatnot. But he's also cheap every year, so I can't blame any team for
So
trying
cheap.
him out. Like it's cheap
Yeah.
every year. So like as a Giants fan, I'm like, yeah, bring him in for $6 million or whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
And he still hits. Like he's better
Yeah.
than Kutch, but
Yeah.
ADP's around 360. I don't hate it in deep leagues. What are you thinking? He looks like he's gonna lead off too.
Yeah. They just haven't penciled in for to lead off, and it's like if he's leading off, I mean, and he's like basically free in drafts, like I don't see why you wouldn't take a shot at him. We'll see if he, if he still has anything in the tank, but why not? Like I said, if you get a leadoff hitter and a guy who's even in the last couple seasons still been valuable on a kind of a per at bat basis, I would take a shot at him. Sure.
Yep, 100% with you on that one. IKF, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, before they signed Pham, was projected to lead off, which was already concerns to begin with. He's
Yeah.
eligible all over the place. Looks to be the starting shortstop for now.
Oh,
Yeah, he goes around 362. Where are we at on IKF? Because that's the answer I've had when I've asked that question on him since I started this series about 4 years ago when he was a J. No matter what team he's on, it's always like, Like he's just
Yeah,
there and in the way. So what are our thoughts on IKF?
he's very much in the way, and I think people were very disappointed when that was their prize acquisition at the deadline when they pretended like they were gonna make moves. Like, really, you brought in IKF? Like that was and they brought in the De La Cruz from Miami, and like, come on, guys, don't if you're gonna make a move, make a real move. Don't do these fake trades like you're actually going for something. Um, I don't know. The guy's a decent ball player. He's a nice utility guy, but he's not a starting everyday player, and
Exactly.
he's just not. And I think they're going to try to make him that, but obviously there's some other guys here that are going to push for playing time. I really like Nick York, and we'll talk about him uh, shortly here. I want nothing to do with IKF personally. Maybe if he like I said earlier with Kutch, if he's hot and you want to stream him or something, but I have not a lot of faith that he's gonna have much of a year, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. Like he should be on the bench as a utility player and running from there. Nick Gonzalez is a guy that I'm kind of interested in. I liked his small sample hitting for average a little bit. He showed a little more pop this go around. Like there's sure to be question marks, but once a big time prospect, you guys I believe traded for him a
Yeah.
while back. His ADP is around 360. Where do you sit on Nick Gonzalez? Because you mentioned York, who we'll talk about in a minute. Some people feel like York's going to get the job over Gonzalez, but for now, it seems like a lot of moving parts. There's what I'm trying to get at.
There's a lot of moving parts, and none of them are none of them are like great solutions. I did read a little bit. They said they've even tried Nick York at first base. So that's one of the reasons I have a little bit of optimism that they might trying to find a spot for his bat because clearly he hits, and Nick Gonzalez hits. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
So, in a perfect world, they would, Nick Gonzalez could play shortstop, and they would send IK after the bench. But I don't know that they're going to do that. Um, Nick Gonzalez certainly can hit, right?
Yeah.
We saw that last year. I like him. I mean, at that range, if it's a similar range to where IKF's going, I would much rather have Gonzalez than
Yeah.
IKF.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've been grabbing Gonzalez in draft and hold formats. I think there's plenty of upside there. The rumors of playing time are not my favorite rumors to listen to, but I always tell myself it's a Pirates team that eventually needs to let young kids play, and hopefully that someday will happen.
Right.
Brian Hayes, man, oh man, like what is going on here besides the consistent back issues? Apparently, knock on wood, healthy entering spring, but it's just been one thing after another, Dan, and it has lowered his ADP to close to 360 as well.
I
Like
know. I
this is
see
a dude
that.
that used to be like a third, fourth round pick, and it's basically end game talk. I just can't even click the button there. Like, where are we at
No.
on Brian Hayes?
Um, Pretty dejected because I know just a couple years ago when we were doing this, we were talking about him as a sleeper, and
Yep.
he was ready to bounce back, and he certainly has had all the tools. He just hasn't, number one, been able to stay healthy, and even then, when healthy, he hasn't shown us what he can really do. I mean, uh, I don't know. He might be officially entering bust territory here, and I don't know that they have to give him playing time in at bats. If he's struggling, they have other guys that can play there, and they have other hitters, other young hitters that want to develop too. So he's probably just a stay away because you know, I don't have a lot of faith that he's ever gonna do it. Unfortunately,
Yeah, like I'm out, and it feels like we were talking about like Nick Gonzalez could go to third, and New York could go to second, or York could go to third. Like
right? Those
there's
guys
so
are all
many pieces.
interchangeable, right?
Yeah, and I'd rather see one of them give me a shot in fantasy than Cabrian, which is a shame, all things
Yeah,
considered.
yeah, it's too bad.
Um, we might as well get to Nick York because it depends. Like right now, they have him starting in the minors. I don't think that happens, to be honest. They
He's
did
too
sign
good.
Adam Frazier, which kind of screws that up, obviously. But
Ugh, yeah.
what are your thoughts on Nick York? I know I had prospects at the end, but let's just bring him up because I think he's going to factor more like earlier in the season than most prospects.
Yeah, I mean, I really like him. That was part of my favorite guys that they brought in trades last year, and just about finding a spot for him. He's one of the youngest of those guys. He's obviously had some of the best contact skills, and they got to find a home for him. I hope that the idea of the cream rises to the top kind of applies here, and that even if he starts at AAA, if he's hitting the cover off the ball the first month, that they get him up and get him in the lineup because that's the key for them to compete is just to have guys that hit. Doesn't even matter if they have a lot of power. Like just be a money ball team and just have a bunch of guys that hit for average and steal bases. But you can't just have these holes in your lineup like IKF or other guys that just are vacuums that just don't do anything. So I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. But then again, we've talked about before how the Pirates are often slow to make these changes, and they drag their feet with stuff. And a lot of people in Pirates Nation talk about it all the time about how just they've lost all faith in the manager. They don't even know how Derek Sheldon still has a job after the last 4 seasons. And the GM, I mean, I don't want to be overly negative, but in general, if you have some good young players here, play them. Just put them in, put the best guys on the field, and maybe you'll compete. I think he's easily one of the best 9 hitters. He should be in the lineup, but you got to bank on the fact that they do the right thing.
It's I treat a lot of these preview shows like therapy for some people because I'm not
good.
even kidding. Like your little rant there was beautiful because I have that with the Giants all the time. But I'm not
Oh
kidding.
man.
Like when I had the White Sox, I had Sarah Sanchez for the Cubs, and she just railed Jed Hoyer for like 5 minutes. Like there's a few teams that rightfully so get their just due on this show. I know those people will never listen to these shows, but if they did, they'd know what the nation feels like about
Yeah.
them. Um, you could literally just say pass if you want, but two names that I know we've seen in deeper formats like have streamability. I don't know if you had any thoughts on them. You have Jared Triolo, who hits for average. It's about it. And you have Joshua Palacios, who had his moment like 2 years ago, didn't do too much
Yeah.
last year. Any desire for them outside of streaming?
I don't think so. Triolo had his opportunity last year, I think, where he got a lot of playing time, and he just didn't do enough, to really warrant any kind of, you know, kind of stock in him going forward. Palacios is so toolsy, and like you look at him, he's like such an athlete, and like you think he should do more, but he hasn't done a whole lot with his opportunity. Though last year he so either so, and they're good in the outfield. Like they're not really looking for another outfielder. They're looking for infielders, obviously. So I think there's just more opportunity there for some of those other guys.
All righty, let's head to the bump. We talked about him at the start of the show. Hard not to talk about him. He's the first pitcher off the boards. Him and Scooble, depends on your draft, are the top two pitchers off the board. That's when Paul Skeens, ADP is around 10 right now. We saw 133 big league innings last year, about 160 overall. So he's stretched out, ready to roll. We saw pure domination. What's the excitement level? Because we all know how good he is, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that people are still has them dialed in is the fact that you have arguably the best pitcher in baseball. I think he's obviously a Cy Young contender, and we're going to get a full season. What's that look like? I'm not really concerned about innings. I know last year we were a little more concerned, and when would he actually come up? But the guy is a workhorse. He's built for it. We've even talked about how he doesn't have a whole bunch of innings on his arm from college. How he was a catcher, right? He only had like one season of throwing a lot at LSU, so it's not like he has all these many innings on his arm. He's built for this. Uh, I love him. I mean, I love Scooble too, but like you can't really lose with either one of those guys. He obviously this preseason, I think they talked about he may have added a cutter, and potentially like just been toying around with a couple of his other pitches or like a two seamer, which he didn't really throw last year. So like, man, if he ends up having 4 or 5 pitches, like good luck. I don't know what to tell people. Like he's. I'm excited to see what where the ceiling is because obviously his rookie year was so good that like if he takes another step, man, he's going to be generational.
Yeah, as a baseball fan, I love it's like must see TV when he takes the bump.
Yeah,
Seeing some of the Twitter videos from that new pitch you mentioned, like when he faced Adam Frazier, was just ridiculous.
right.
So I played ball through most of high school, and I thought some good pitchers. Like I couldn't imagine sitting in the batter's box watching that come my direction. That is just insanity to
It's
me.
not fair. It's really not. The fact that and like I said, if I do a lot with pitching and studying pitchers, and the fact that his arm angle and the four seamer, and then you want to talk about a cutter and then having a two seamer. Like if you're going to be able to come at hitters, righties and lefties in all different directions, and then obviously the splinker, the split finger splitter, whatever you want to call that pitch, is just filthy. Like that thing should be illegal. It's just I don't know how anybody hits it. If he keeps it at the waist or below, like nobody's touching it. So yeah, it's fun to watch. I love watching the pitching ninja and all of his breakdowns of all that stuff. I mean he's every bit deserving of going in that top 10.
Let's talk about his counterpart for now. And when Jared Jones got 121 big league innings last year, we saw him be absolutely great, then some struggling and kind of worked around it. He's apparently working on the pitch mix this year, which is very enticing. And his ADP right now is around 140. So he's like an SP 4-ish, give or take, depending on how you draft. I've been kind of I'm in on Jones and watching that
Yeah.
growth. I know some maybe be skeptical. What are your thoughts on what we should expect from year 2 of Jared Jones?
Yeah, I mean that's the guy of all these guys we talked about where I think there is that margin for profit because he flashed some serious upside, and I know he went through that kind of middle of the season lull and he had an injury and whatnot, but for what we saw from him when he was on at his best was elite. And if he's going to continue to, that's what young pitchers do. They figure out how to pitch. I mean, Paul Skeens already kind of has that and knew that. But I mean, Jerry Jones definitely is learning more how to pitch. But gosh, the guy has really good control, excellent velocity, great breaking stuff. To me, that's a steal. If he even hits 85% of his potential, I think he smashes that ADP and has a really big year. Um, I'm in on him for sure.
Yep, with you there. With every team that has young starting pitchers, you need that veteran that can just eat up innings. That's what Mitch Keller is. Like once was the ace of the staff. Take that for whatever grain of salt you wish. And we've seen him be formidable. Last year, he's kind of this guy now. He's like a quality starts guy. Strikeouts are what they are, but again, eats innings. 178 innings, 194 the year before. Right now, you could draft Mitch Keller at an ADP of 290. Where are we at on Mitch Keller?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny we've rode the whole gambit of Mitch Keller to like being in on him when he was at that one year he's going at 500 and he had a huge season, and then last year people being probably too high on him, and now where does he level out? I think that's the question is like, is his equilibrium a replacement level pitcher? Is he above average? Is he? I like him. I think he's pretty good. I obviously think I have this weird thing with pitchers where I think when they're on staffs with other good pitchers, it tends to elevate them because I know they sit down there in the bullpen all day, 5 days a week, and they compare pitches and they look at each other's hand grips and stuff. I do think being around Paul Skeens and Jared Jones and stuff is gonna elevate him a little bit and force him to bring his best stuff. Maybe he learns some stuff from them. But in general, I mean, he's really good. I think he's fine there. I think if obviously I think he's kind of exercised his demons. He got those first really couple bad years out of the way early, and I think he's pretty good. I mean, I'm for number 3 starter. I couldn't be more happy. I think he's probably a number 2 on some other clubs. I don't think he's an ace, but I think he's pretty good. And to have him as a third starter is a nice luxury for Pittsburgh. It speaks to the depth of the rotation that he's a 3.
No, that's a phenomenal point. Like on a lot of teams, he might be elsewhere. Like I kind of joked, he used to be the ace of Pittsburgh. So
Right,
the fact that he's now the 3 is perfect. Like this is what you want.
right.
And our good buddy, who you know as well, Corbin Young, is one of the
Yeah,
biggest Mitch Keller supporters on the face
he
of the
is.
planet, and he keeps
Yeah.
pounding that drum. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm just going to group these 3 together. You have Bailey Falter, Johan Oviedo, and the newly signed Andrew Heaney. It seems like are fighting for the last 2 spots for now. We'll get to why for now in a
Yeah,
second.
for now.
But let's talk about these 3. I'll let you have the floor before I say anything else. Any interest in a Falter, Oviedo, or Heaney, who are all in the game picks?
Definitely not falter because we've seen what he is, and he's a placeholder. He's a fifth starter type. Like he probably wouldn't be in the rotation if they didn't already have somebody they could go to. I think he pitched above his head for a lot of last year. I know like he kind of eventually caught up with him and he had some blow up starts. I'm not a big fan of Falter. Um, Oviedo, he at least flashed some like potential at one point, and looked like a guy who could put it together. I still don't think he's someone I'd really highly target because I do think they're going to end up going with Heaney just because of Heaney's
Mhm.
you know experience, whatever you want to call it, his his background. And I think the writing on the wall for all the guys is obviously that that they have these guys sitting at AAA. One named Bubba, right?
Yep.
Go Bubbas.
Yep.
But no, I don't have much. I'm not really interested in either one of those guys. I think that if you told me by the end of the season they're both out of the rotation, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, when it comes to Oviedo and Falter, they've had their moments. I think they're streaming choices, run them while they're
Right.
hot, matchups, and go from there. Heaney, I'm a little intrigued by in deeper formats just because we know he's had the runs. He overachieved last year, but he had that window where he succeeded. So I could see the argument there. Again, we'll talk more prospects later, but I do want to bring up Bubba Chandler because this is a guy
Please.
I have banged with the drum for this draft season. I have been drafting him a lot of places. In underdog, I said I love drafting him late in underdog because it's kind of like that
Everywhere.
Paul Skeens effect. They said he's
Yes.
going to probably be out a month, and his workload's fine. He can go all year. What are you guys hoping for with Bubba Chandler here? Because what's interesting when you look at ADP in 12-team leagues, his ADP is 270. It's better than Mitch Keller's, and he might not even start the season with the team. But that's the expectations now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it should be really interesting. What you hope that I think it's obvious that he's going to start AAA, but what happens is he going to do what he did? He had such a small sample size of AAA last year. He spent most of your AA, but he came up to AAA and he was better, right? He was lights out. We see that sometimes with guys because AAA, isn't always the same competition as AA with in terms of younger guys and prospects. But yeah, I mean, if he the first month does what he did last year at AAA, they freaking better bring him up May 1st or whatever day they have pegged for it because I love him. He's awesome. He should be being drafted that highly because he has such a ceiling. And when you think about him as the fourth starter along with those other three, I don't really care who they put out there the fifth day. If they're putting those four out there, and maybe Andrew Heaney's that guy. I will say this about Andrew Heaney: you couldn't pick a better park for a fly ball left-handed pitcher.
100%. Great call.
PNC Park has the deepest left center field. How many balls have seen die out in the notch, north side notch? I'm trying to think. Years ago, they had a lefty. I can't think of who it was, but he was so mid. He was so not great, but he just 8 innings and had a 4 ERA because he was a fly ball left-handed pitcher, and that park just favors that pitcher because of the where the ball just dies in the left field outfield. But yeah, I mean Heaney's whatever they get out of Heaney's great, but Bubba should be up in a month, and if he's not, something's wrong, right? Like I don't really understand why they wouldn't want to take advantage of all this young pitching at one time.
Yep, strike while the iron's hot. Let's go to the bullpen real quick before we talk prospects here. David Bednar, atrocious season, got supplanted by Aroldis Chapman. For now, David Bednar is back in the closing role. Maybe there's some options to replace him at some point. Who knows? Maybe Bednar figures it out because once he was the dude, his ADP is around 150. So where are you sitting on Bednar entering the season?
Well, it's kind of funny because, he's kind of set up for a bounce back in terms of there could be some profit there on that ADP if he comes back to anything close to what he was before last year. Obviously, it was really rough. I didn't dig into his underlying stats a whole lot and take a look, but I'm curious as to what was so different or whether it was just fluky or bad luck because he didn't have a huge velocity drop. He didn't have anything injury kind of questions. It was just kind of he forgot how to close, right? Or he just couldn't get it done anymore. But he's going to have the opportunity first, and I don't think they have anyone that's that great to supplant him. If anyone supplants him, it's going to be because he lost the job. I don't think anybody in that bullpen is going to be so good that they have to entertain promoting him over him. I think if they have another closer, it's because he flops. You know what I mean?
Yep. That's kind of where I was. I was like, at least with Chapman last year, you can kind of see it coming.
Right.
It's like we all kind of maybe thought Colin Holderman would be the dude. He really never ran with
Right.
it. He still could, but it's just there's not that guy there right now. Maybe it's a minor leaguer we see pitch great in spring and something happens, but yeah, I'm with you on that. Before we talk prospects, I should have mentioned it. I forgot because he's on the IL. What are our thoughts on the Spencer Horwitz situation? I was looking at him. I should have mentioned that earlier, but yeah, what are your thoughts on Horwitz, who somehow still over the last 2 weeks is getting drafted in an ADP of 350?
Yeah, I mean, I was excited when they made that deal because I like him as a player. I thought he would fit nicely with what they're trying to do, kind of like Moneyball player, high on base percentage, left-handed power in that park is a good place for it. As a real life pickup, I really liked it. But now that he's hurt and he's going to miss at least a month or
That's what they're
more.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be tough to draft him at all. Just keep an eye on him. My thing was like they have such a hole there at first base. They're going to be trying to use, I guess, Eddie Rodriguez, and maybe they may end up moving Nick York there. Whoever ends up being there isn't really a true first baseman. They don't even have a true first baseman on the roster. So I would just say keep an eye on him when he's healthy, and if he comes up, there could be a situation where you can snag him off waivers and plug him in. Like I said, he's nothing sexy, but he is a good on base guy. He's hit, if he ends up platooning, he hits righties really well, and that's a good park for lefty power. So it's like a very situational kind of thing with him. But I mean, as far as talent goes, he's the best first baseman they've had talent wise in years. I think they putting Rowdy Tellez out there last year. Come on.
It was perfect for the setup of the team. I'm with you on that. So kind of a bummer, but something to keep in mind. Prospects. We've talked Nick York. We've mentioned Bubba Chandler. Obviously, the one thing about Pittsburgh is they have a lot of young players that might have an impact sooner than later. So, what are some guys to maybe keep an eye on this year?
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, the guy is Henry Davis, number one pick. Um, it's very disappointing that he hasn't been able to do it yet. I thought last year, after the spring that he had, and it looked like he had made some swing adjustments, and that he was really going to pan out, and he didn't. So obviously, that's the first guy to keep an eye on, because we said, catcher and first base are their big kind of holes in their on their offense. So or DH, if he can hit, they're going to play him somewhere, or put him in the lineup. So obviously keep an eye on Henry Davis. He even played some outfield, I think, for a little bit at times a couple years ago. So Henry Davis. Outside of that, man, that's the problem, is they have tons of pitching talent and prospects. When it comes to the bats, it gets thin. I know you mentioned Billy Cook earlier.
Yeah, I was wondering about him. That's a guy that I'm kind of interested in.
Yeah, I mean, again, they have a need for that bat. They have a need for first baseman or corner outfielder. So keep an eye on him. Just scrolling down through to see who I forgot about. Oh, Jack Sawinski is still like
Yeah, I saw Pitcher
guy.
List came out with an article. What happened to Jack Sawinski? And I just laughed because my God, we were all so excited about him for so long.
Yeah, I know. And I kind of had in the back of my head thought this is another like Rob McCoviak type who's going to be like a fluky 20 some home run guy who never does anything again. Probably is the case, but who knows? Keep an eye on him. And of course, Jiwan Bay was like a major stolen base guy and like speed guy. He's still in their organization, but he's 25, 26 now. So it's like now or never. Uh, the problem is for any of those guys, you can't really rule them out totally, because if any one of them does anything, there's room for them. There's playing time. They're playing Tommy freaking Pham for Pete's sake. So it's like if anyone has opportunity, or anyone gets hot or starts playing well, there's certainly opportunities. But none of those guys stand out as like must draft types, or just guys to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's like injuries is going to dictate a lot of it. There's a lot of guys there, but yeah, nothing for sure, because they keep adding all these weird or old timers. All
Yeah,
right,
they love to do that. They love to bring in washed up old timers.
cheap old timers, like what the A's are doing now, which is so frustrating as well. All right, last question I have for you: what's your expectations in 2025?
Yeah, so I think they'll be frustratingly average. Meaning I could see them winning 80 to 85 games if things go right. But I think that's their ceiling, because they just don't have enough hitting. Sure, you're going to win some 3-2 and 3-1 games when you have that top three pitching staff, the top three in that staff. But there's just too many holes in this lineup. Again, you almost need like career years out of. You need three things. You need O'Neal Cruz to like be like an actual star and not like a decent player. You need like career years, or like top years from like Reynolds, and you need at least two or three other young guys to emerge as legit 270, 280, 290 hitters who can get on base and drive some runs, like a Gonzalez or a York or someone else to do something. Otherwise, there's just gonna be a lot of games where they score 2 and 3 and 4 runs, and you can't win game. You can't be a winning baseball team, right? With no offense. It's just, I know everyone loves pitching and pitching wins championships and all that stuff in the postseason. That's true, but you gotta have bats, and there's no bats in the lineup, and there's not a lot of organizational depth with bats. It's just that's why people were so frustrated they didn't bring in a couple hitters in free agency, because there's just, I don't know what they're counting on guys that haven't done it and haven't. They're counting on Eddie Rodriguez or Henry Davis or one of these prospects figuring it out, and none of them have so far. So my expectations are very tempered. I think a really good year would be like 80 to 85 wins. They could easily go out and win 65 if, like a Skeens got hurt or one of their pitchers got hurt. It's the floor is low and the ceiling is right at 500.
It'll be interesting because, yeah, with that rotation, if you add Chandler to it, those 4, just the way they pitch, they should be able to win like half of those starts every time out.
Right,
Which
right.
makes, I
That's
sense,
why people are so frustrated.
I sense it, man. I get
you
it.
bring in you bring in one guy, you bring in Anthony Santander, just one big bat to put on the other side of Reynolds and Cruz, and you say, hey, if this guy brings us 4 or 5 more wins, that is a huge. You talk about all these teams being lumped together between 75 and 85 wins, probably half the league, right? If you get a 5-WAR player or some kind of even 6-WAR player, that's such a huge jump. So I don't know. I think my hot take would be the Reds win the division because they have so much talent, and if they stay healthy with Lodolo and Matt McClain and those guys, they were my pick to win. I know people love the Cubs, the Brewers will contend, but I think the Reds have the most talent, top to bottom.
Yep, I'm with you there, but we'll see. The beauty is spring training has begun, and we'll get to see some big boy baseball real soon. But before we head out of here, Dan, remind everybody where they can find you and what you got going on.
Yeah, check me out, Thunder Dan DFS on the Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days. I'm going to be doing a lot of most of my stuff for preseason baseball is pitching related. I've kind of focused on pitchers a lot, and then after that we'll be doing baseball MLB DFS. I know you love DFS as much as I do, and then I'll be just wrapping up stuff here with NBA here in the next couple of months too. But yeah, I love it, man. Excited for it. Appreciate you having me back, and excited about baseball, even if the Pirates are gonna be the Pirates again.
Dan, there's a reason we play DFS and fantasy baseball is because we have teams that frustrate us so much. We have to find a way to enjoy it. So that's the beauty of it all.
100%.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. We'll bring it back again next year and have some fun with that. And folks, if you like playing DFS seriously, or you like betting, check out a Substack. A lot of great stuff. Guys always grinding it out. But for now, this was Benched with Bubba, episode 742, your 2025 Pirates Team Preview. Catch you all next time.